You really thought you were invited? Vanessa asked with a laugh so soft, so casual, that for a second, I honestly believed I had misunderstood her. I stood frozen in my kitchen holding the chocolate cake I had spent all afternoon baking for Ryan's birthday dinner. The frosting still smelled like vanilla and warm butter. Outside my window, rain tapped gently against the glass, and the yellow porch light reflected off the wet driveway in long blurry streaks. "I'm sorry," I asked quietly. Vanessa sighed into the phone like I was making things difficult on purpose. "Helen, we decided to keep tonight immediate family only." Immediate family. The words settled into my chest like cold stones. I looked down at the cake box in my trembling hands. 32 years ago, I was the woman who stayed awake 3 nights sewing Ryan's Halloween costumes because we couldn't afford store-bought ones. I was the woman who worked double shifts at the diner so he could go to summer baseball camp. I was the woman who sat beside his hospital bed for 40 straight hours when he caught pneumonia at 9 years old. And now, somehow, I wasn't immediate family anymore. "Ryan knows about this?" asked after a long silence. Another pause. I could hear clinking glasses and restaurant chatter behind her voice. Soft jazz music. People laughing. "Of course he does," she replied quickly. "Helen, don't make this awkward." Awkward. My throat tightened so badly I could barely breathe. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see the dining table already set inside my house. Blue napkins. Birthday candles. The old framed photo of Ryan smiling with missing front teeth when he turned 10. I had spent the entire morning preparing his favorite dinner, pot roast, garlic mashed potatoes, homemade peach cobbler cooling on the counter. Like every birthday before this one. "I understand," I whispered finally, though I didn't understand anything at all. Vanessa's voice brightened instantly. "Perfect. I knew you'd be mature about it." Then she hung up.
Just like that. No good vie. No epaleji.
Nothing. I stood there for a very long time listening to the rain, staring at my reflection in the dark. Kitchen window. My silver bob looked perfectly neat. My pearl earrings still matched the navy sweater I had carefully pressed earlier that afternoon. I had even curled my eyelashes. God help me. I really thought my son would want me there. At 7:43 that night, while the candles beside me slowly burned down untouched, Lily posted a photo from the restaurant. Ryan smiling. Vanessa holding a champagne glass. Everyone gathered around a giant birthday steak covered in sparklers. And beneath the picture, one comment appeared again and again. "Where's Helen?" I did not cry that night. That was the strange part. I thought humiliation like that would break something inside me immediately, but instead, everything became very quiet. The rain stopped around 9 o'clock, leaving the neighborhood still and silver beneath the streetlights. I sat alone at my kitchen table while the candles beside Ryan's untouched birthday cake melted into pale puddles of wax. The house smelled like roasted garlic and cinnamon peaches. Warm, comforting smells that suddenly felt painful. My phone kept lighting up across the table. Notifications from social media. Comments under Lily's photograph multiplying every minute. "Where is Helen?" I thought his mother always hosted birthday dinners. "Is she sick?" I turned the phone face down without answering any of them. For years, I had protected my family from uncomfortable conversations. I covered tension with polite smiles, softened insults, pretended not to notice when Vanessa interrupted me or corrected me in front of guests. But sitting there in the dim kitchen light, something uncomfortable settled into my mind. People noticed my absence because I had always been there before. Every holiday, every birthday, every graduation dinner, every emergency babysitting call at 6 in the morning when Vanessa needed help. Suddenly memories began drifting through my head like scattered photographs. Thanksgiving 3 years ago when Vanessa changed the dinner location at the last minute and forgot to text me the address. Lily's piano recital where they saved seats for neighbors, but not for me. Christmas morning when Ryan told me they wanted a quiet morning alone, only for me to later see pictures online of a house full of Vanessa's relatives opening gifts beside my grandchildren. At the time, I convinced myself it was coincidence. Miscommunication. Modern families were busy, I told myself. Younger people did things differently. But now, sitting alone with a cold pot roast still untouched in the oven. I felt those memories clicking together slowly, quietly, like puzzle pieces finally finding the right place. Around 10:15, my phone rang again. Ryan's name flashed across the screen. I stared at it for several seconds before answering. "Hey, Mom," he said casually, loud restaurant noise still behind his voice. "Sorry, things were kind of hectic tonight." I waited. My fingers tightened around the edge of the tablecloth. "People kept asking where you were," he added with an awkward laugh. "Lily accidentally made things weird."
Weird.
Not cruel. Not hurtful.
Weird.
I closed my eyes for a moment. "I did not want to embarrass anyone," I said softly. Silence met me on the other end. Then Ryan cleared his throat. "Vanessa just thought smaller dinners would be easier this year." Easier. Another careful word. Another excuse wrapped in politeness. I looked around my empty dining room, at the framed family photos lining the walls, at 30 years of birthdays and Christmas mornings and backyard barbecues captured in smiling frozen images. Then I finally asked the question I should have asked years ago. "Ryan, when did your wife start deciding whether I belong in this family?" Ryan did not answer me right away. I could hear muffled voices behind him, silverware clinking against plates, someone laughing too loudly in the background. The sound of a family dinner continuing comfortably, while mine sat cold and untouched 20 minutes away. Finally, he exhaled slowly. "Mom, do not do this tonight." There it was. Not concern for my feelings. Not denial. Just exhaustion. As though my pain had become an inconvenience he wanted managed quietly before dessert arrived at the table. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the soft yellow light above the stove. My late husband Daniel installed that lamp himself almost 20 years ago after I complained the kitchen felt too dark during winter evenings. "People should always feel warm when they walk into your home," he used to say. For decades, I made sure they did. Ryan's friends practically grew up in this house. There were muddy cleats by the back door every baseball season, pizza boxes stacked on the counter during sleepovers, Christmas mornings with wrapping paper covering every inch of the living room carpet. Vanessa herself once cried at this very kitchen table before their wedding because she was afraid Ryan's job offer in Chicago would take him away from his family. I still remember taking her hands and promising, "No matter where life takes you to, this will always be home." Funny how quickly people forget promises once comfort becomes routine. "I am not trying to ruin your evening," I said calmly. "I just asked a question." Another silence followed. Longer this time. Then Ryan lowered his voice. "Vanessa thinks there are times when, honestly, Mom, you make things emotionally heavy." Emotionally heavy. I almost smiled hearing it. Such polished words. Modern therapy language wrapped carefully around cruelty, so nobody had to feel guilty using it. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the windows gently. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice before the neighborhood fell quiet again. "Did I make things heavy when I paid your rent after the housing market crashed?" I asked softly. "Or when I watched Lily every day for 2 summers so Vanessa could finish real estate school?" Ryan groaned under his breath. "That is not fair."
Fair.
Another interesting word. My eyes drifted toward the refrigerator, where Lily's kindergarten drawings still hung beneath a butterfly magnet. Grandma and me written in crooked purple crayon letters. I wondered how long before Vanessa decided that needed to disappear too. "You know what hurts the most?" I said after a long pause. "It is not missing one dinner. It is realizing how long I have been quietly erased while pretending not to notice." Ryan said nothing, and in that silence, I finally heard it clearly. Not confusion. Not helplessness.
Choice.
He had seen what was happening for years. He had simply decided keeping his wife comfortable mattered more than protecting his mother from humiliation. Upstairs, the old grandfather clock chimed 11 times through the empty house. I closed my eyes as the final bell echoed softly through the hallway. Then I heard another voice suddenly cut through Ryan's phone line. "Vanessa." Sharp. Irritated. "Are you seriously still talking about this?" The moment I heard Vanessa's voice in the background, something inside me became very still. "Ryan, honestly, give me the phone," she snapped, no longer bothering to sound sweet. There was shuffling, muffled movement, then her voice came through clear and cold against my ear. Helen, people are staring. Can we not turn this into family drama tonight? I looked slowly around my empty kitchen. The untouched birthday cake. The folded cloth napkins. The rainwater still glistening on the dark patio outside. Family drama. It amazed me how often the person causing the wound accused everyone else of bleeding too loudly. I did not call you, I replied quietly. Your husband called me. Vanessa laughed softly under her breath. Because Lily made everyone uncomfortable with those comments online.
Ah.
So that was the real problem. Not what they did, but that other people noticed it. I could suddenly picture the restaurant perfectly. Vanessa sitting stiffly beneath warm pendant lights, fingers tight around a wine glass while relatives exchanged awkward glances across the table. Her carefully curated evening cracking apart because a 14-year-old girl asked an honest question. You embarrassed yourself tonight, not me, I said calmly. Silence. Then her voice sharpened immediately. You always do this. You make Ryan feel guilty for growing up and having his own life. I almost responded instantly, almost defended myself the way I had done for years. But then I stopped. Because for the first time, I realized something important. Vanessa did not actually want answers. She wanted control. Control over the story.
Control over Ryan.
Control over how everyone saw me. Every memory from the past decades suddenly looked different under that light. The canceled invitations. The forgotten phone calls. The way she always spoke for Ryan before he could answer questions himself. Even the seating arrangements during holidays somehow always placed me at the farthest end of the table beside strangers, while her mother sat directly beside my son. Tiny things. Small enough to seem petty if mentioned out loud. But together, they painted a picture impossible to ignore now. You know, I said softly, I used to think maybe you just did not like me. Vanessa let out a dry laugh. Helen, not everything is personal.
No, irraplia.
I think this was very personal. The line went quiet again. In the background, I heard someone asking where the birthday candles were. Another person laughing loudly. Life continuing around them while this conversation finally peeled years of politeness away like old wallpaper. I have spent 10 years trying to make your life easier, I continued carefully. I defended you when Ryan's father thought you were too controlling. I babysat when you wanted weekends away. I helped pay for Lily's dance classes when your real estate business was slow. And somehow, after all of that, you still looked at me tonight and decided I did not belong at my own son's birthday dinner. Vanessa inhaled sharply. For the first time since this conversation began, she sounded nervous. Then she said the one sentence that changed everything. Maybe if you stopped acting like Ryan still belongs to you, people would actually enjoy having you around. I felt the air leave my lungs slowly. Not because the words shocked me, but because they finally explained everything. After Vanessa said those words, neither of us spoke for several seconds. I could hear my own breathing softly in the quiet kitchen. Somewhere inside the refrigerator, the ice maker dropped fresh cubes with a sharp crack that startled me more than it should have. Funny how ordinary sounds suddenly feel louder when your entire understanding of your family shifts in a single evening. I never tried to own my son, I said finally. My voice sounded calm even to me. Tired, but calm. I simply loved him. Vanessa exhaled impatiently. That is exactly what I mean. Everything becomes emotional with you. Emotional. That word again. As though warmth itself had become embarrassing. As though family was supposed to function like a business arrangement where nobody owed each other loyalty once children became adults. I glanced toward the old photographs lining the hallway wall. Ryan at 16 holding his driver's license with that crooked, proud smile. Ryan at 22 in his college graduation robe, while Daniel wiped tears pretending he had allergies. Ryan dancing with me at his wedding reception before Vanessa gently interrupted halfway through the song because the photographer needed couple shots. Back then I thought she was simply excited. Now I wondered how early the distancing had started. I should go, Vanessa said abruptly. People are waiting. Waiting?
Yes.
There were always people waiting for Vanessa.
Clients, friends, dinner guests,
social media comments. Appearances mattered deeply to her. maybe more deeply than kindness itself. Before I could answer, another voice suddenly entered the background. Lily. Mom. Why are you fighting with Grandma? Vanessa hissed something away from the phone too muffled for me to understand. Then I heard Lily again, louder this time. Everybody keeps asking where she is. My chest tightened hearing her voice. Sweet Lily with her nervous habit of twisting bracelets around her wrist whenever adults argued nearby. There was movement, chairs scraping, then Ryan came back onto the line sounding strained. Mom, maybe we should talk another day. Another day. Another delay. Another attempt to smooth things over without actually acknowledging the wound underneath. Normally, I would have agreed immediately just to keep peace in the family. But something had shifted tonight. Maybe humiliation finally burns away denial. No, I said quietly. I think we have avoided this conversation long enough. Silence answered me again. Heavy silence this time. The kind families carry for years before finally admitting something is broken. I stood slowly from the kitchen table and walked toward the sink. Outside, fog had begun settling over the quiet suburban street, softening the glow from porch lights across the neighborhood. Everything looked blurred around the edges. Ryan, I said carefully, I need you to answer one honest question. If Vanessa's mother had been excluded from this dinner the way I was tonight, would you have stayed silent? I already knew the answer before he spoke. That was the painful part. The silence stretched so long I could hear distant restaurant music through the phone again. Then finally, very softly, my son said, "Probably not." And somehow that hurt more than everything else combined. Ryan's confession stayed with me long after the call ended. Probably not. Two small words, but they echoed through the house louder than shouting ever could. Around midnight, I finally wrapped the untouched birthday cake in plastic and placed it carefully into the refrigerator beside the peach cobbler. My hands moved slowly, automatically, like they belonged to someone much older than 68. The kitchen suddenly felt enormous around me. Too quiet, too clean, too aware of my loneliness. I turned off the downstairs lights one by one before heading upstairs to bed, but sleep never came. Instead, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan turning lazily above me while memories drifted through the dark. Ryan at 5 years old crawling into my bed during thunderstorms. Ryan at 17 asking me for advice before his first real date. Ryan at 32 sitting at this same kitchen table crying after losing his first major investment account, terrified he would not be able to provide for his family. Every version of my son had once turned toward me when life became difficult. Somewhere along the way, that changed. Or maybe Vanessa simply made sure it changed. The next morning, sunlight spilled pale and cold through my bedroom curtains. I shuffled downstairs wrapped in my cream-colored robe and started coffee the same way I had every morning for nearly 40 years. 2 scoops Colombian roast. A dash of cinnamon. The familiar routine steadied me. Outside, the neighborhood looked peaceful beneath soft October light. A delivery truck rolled slowly past trimmed hedges and pumpkin decorations lining the street. Normal suburban life continuing exactly as always while mine quietly cracked beneath the surface. My phone buzzed around 8:30. A text from Vanessa. I think emotions got out of hand last night. Let us move forward positively. I stared at the screen for a long moment before setting the phone face down beside my coffee mug. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she acknowledge what she had actually done. Move forward positively. Another polished phrase designed to skip over accountability entirely. 20 minutes later, another text arrived. This time from Ryan. Lily wants to stop by after school if that is okay. I almost laughed reading it. Last night, I was apparently too emotionally heavy for a birthday dinner, but by morning, I was safe enough for free babysitting again. The realization should have made me angry. Instead, it made me tired. Deeply tired. I carried my coffee into the living room and sat beside the large front window Daniel loved so much. Autumn leaves drifted slowly across the lawn while sunlight warmed the faded quilt folded over the armchair beside me. For years, I believed love meant making yourself endlessly available. Always useful. Always forgiving. Always understanding. But sitting there in the quiet morning light, I suddenly wondered something painful. Had my kindness slowly trained them to believe I would tolerate anything? Around noon, my friend Claire called after seeing the birthday photographs online. "Helen," she said gently, "can I ask you something honestly?" I closed my eyes briefly. "Go ahead." Claire hesitated before speaking again. "How long has Vanessa been pushing you out of that family?" Her question settled over me heavier than I expected because for the first time, I did not have an answer ready to defend my daughter-in-law anymore. Claire came over that afternoon carrying a paper bag from the little bakery downtown where she always bought cinnamon scones on Saturdays. The sky outside had turned soft and gray again, the kind of quiet autumn afternoon that made the whole neighborhood feel sleepy. I let her in wearing an old cream sweater and no makeup, too emotionally exhausted to pretend everything was normal anymore. Claire set the bakery bag gently on the counter and studied my face for several seconds before speaking. "Helen," she said softly, "you look like you have not slept in days." I almost told her I was fine out of pure habit. Then I stopped myself. "I do not think Ryan defended me once last night," I admitted quietly. Saying it out loud made something ache deep in my chest. Claire nodded slowly, as though she had already suspected that. We sat together at the kitchen table while steam rose from 2 untouched mugs of coffee between us. Outside the window, yellow leaves skittered across the driveway every time the wind picked up. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then Claire leaned back in her chair and sighed. "Can I be brutally honest?" I gave a tired smile. "At this point, please." She folded her hands carefully. "I think Vanessa learned years ago that Ryan would stay quiet no matter what she did." The words landed heavily because I knew they were true. Silence had become Ryan's specialty. Silence during awkward dinners. Silence when Vanessa interrupted me. Silence when holidays changed suddenly and somehow always excluded me. He never openly hurt me himself. He simply stood still while it happened. "Do you remember Lily's 8th birthday party?" Claire asked suddenly. I frowned slightly. "At the country club?" Claire nodded. "Vanessa told people you canceled at the last minute because you were overwhelmed." I stared at her in confusion. "What are you talking about? I was never invited." Claire's expression tightened. "Exactly." The room suddenly felt colder around me. Claire looked uncomfortable now, like someone finally deciding whether to reveal a painful secret they had carried too long. "Helen, there have been comments over the years." My stomach tightened instantly. "What comments?" She hesitated before answering. "Vanessa tells people you struggle with boundaries. That you become too emotionally dependent on Ryan. She says she has to protect their marriage from guilt and manipulation." Manipulation. I actually laughed hearing that word, a short broken laugh that barely sounded like me. Daniel used to joke that I apologized when people stepped on my foot. I spent my whole life trying not to burden anyone. And somehow I had become the villain in stories I never even knew were being told about me. Claire reached across the table and squeezed my hand gently. "Most people never fully believed her," she said quietly. "But over time, when someone repeats the same narrative long enough, people stop questioning it." Narrative. That was exactly what this had become. Vanessa had not removed me from one birthday dinner. She had slowly rewritten my place in the family over years until exclusion felt normal to everyone else. Just then my phone buzzed against the table. A message from Ryan. "Can Lily stay overnight tomorrow? Vanessa and I have an event." I stared at the screen silently, while Claire watched my face change. Then, for the first time in nearly 15 years, I typed a response that surprised even me.
No.
"I think you should make other arrangements." Ryan called me less than 3 minutes after I sent the message. I watched his name flash across my phone while late afternoon sunlight stretched across the hardwood floor in long golden lines. Claire sat quietly across from me at the kitchen table, pretending not to listen while stirring cream into her coffee that had already gone cold. "You told me to make other arrangements?" Ryan asked the second I answered.
No greeting. No worms.
Just disbelief. I leaned back slowly in my chair. "Yes." Silence crackled through the line for a moment. Then came the sigh I knew so well, the one he used whenever life refused to stay convenient. "Mom, it is one night. One night. Funny how people always minimize the things they asked from others while protecting their own comfort fiercely. Actually, I replied softly, it has been many years. Claire lowered her eyes into her coffee cup, hiding a small, sad smile. Ryan sounded frustrated now. You know, Vanessa, and I barely get time together anymore. I stared out the kitchen window where the sky had begun turning pale orange behind the trees. Daniel used to stand in that backyard every fall trimming hedges while Ryan kicked footballs across the lawn with neighborhood boys. Back then, our home felt noisy and alive. Lately, it only seemed useful when somebody needed something from me. I am sure you will figure it out, I said calmly. Ryan exhaled sharply. You are punishing Lily over adult problems now. That sentence hit me harder than I expected because it revealed exactly how little he understood. Or maybe how little he wanted to understand. No, I said quietly. I am finally stopping the habit of pretending I do not matter. The line fell silent again. I could hear traffic moving faintly behind him, probably from inside his car. For years, Ryan always called me while driving between places. Work to home. Home to events. Events to meetings. I fit into the empty spaces of his schedule now instead of being part of his actual life. Vanessa was right, he muttered suddenly. My chest tightened slightly. About what? Another pause. Then he said it. Everything becomes emotionally exhausting with you eventually. Claire's eyes lifted toward me instantly as she heard the change in my breathing. The strange thing was, the words did not devastate me the way they would have a week earlier. Instead, they clarified something. Ryan no longer spoke like the little boy I raised. He sounded like someone repeating lines practiced over years beside the same voice every night at dinner. I see, I whispered. And for the first time in my life, I truly did. After the call ended, the house felt unbelievably quiet again. Claire reached across the table carefully. Helen, she began softly. But I shook my head. No, I said. Do not feel sorry for me. I stood slowly and carried both coffee mugs to the sink while evening shadows deepened through the house around us. I think this may actually be the first honest conversation my son and I have had in years. Just then my phone buzzed again. This time it was not Ryan. It was Lily. One simple text message. Grandma, did I do something wrong? I stared at Lily's message for a very long time before answering. Outside, evening had settled quietly over the neighborhood. Porch lights flickered on one by one across the street, while cold October wind carried leaves spinning across the sidewalks. Claire had already gone home, leaving the house silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the ticking grandfather clock in the hallway. No, sweetheart, I finally typed back. You did absolutely nothing wrong. 3 dots appeared immediately, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, another message came through. Mom is really mad at me. My chest tightened reading those words. 14 years old and already learning what happens inside families when someone tells the truth out loud. I sat slowly in Daniel's old armchair near the front window and pulled a knitted blanket across my lap. For years, I believed keeping peace meant staying silent, swallowing hurt feelings, accepting small humiliations so everyone else could stay comfortable. But silence has a cost. Eventually, people stop seeing your pain altogether. They only notice when your usefulness disappears. My phone rang around 7:30. Ryan again. I almost ignored it this time, but something told me this conversation mattered. Mom, he said immediately after I answered, his voice sounding tired in a way I had never heard before. Not angry. Not defensive. Just tired. Lily will not come out of her room. I closed my eyes briefly. What happened? He exhaled heavily. Vanessa told her she embarrassed us at the restaurant. Us. Such a simple little word. Families can hide cruelty inside words like that for years. And what did Lily say? I asked softly. Silence stretched across the line. Then Ryan answered quietly. She said Grandma was the only person who never made her feel unwanted. The breath caught in my throat before I could stop it. Downstairs, the grandfather clock chimed softly through the dark house. I suddenly pictured Lily sitting alone in her bedroom, hugging that faded blue stuffed rabbit I gave her when she was 6. Sensitive children always notice more than adults think they do. Ryan, I said carefully, children learn how to love by watching us. Another long pause followed. Then, for the first time in this entire painful week, my son's voice cracked slightly. I think I failed you. Tears finally filled my eyes then, not because he had hurt me, but because somewhere, beneath years of silence and avoidance, my little boy was still there. Lost, but still there. I looked around the quiet living room Daniel and I built together over decades. The family photographs, the autumn candles glowing softly on the mantel, the home that once held birthday parties, school projects, late-night talks, and Christmas mornings loud enough to shake the walls. Families do not fall apart all at once. Sometimes they unravel slowly, one ignored feeling at a time. And sometimes the deepest loneliness is not being abandoned by strangers, but becoming invisible to people who once promised you would always belong. If you have ever felt pushed aside by your own family, or if someone made you feel invisible after years of love and sacrifice, I hope you remember this. Your kindness should never require you to disappear. And I would truly love to hear your thoughts, because stories like this happen more often than people admit. Tell me honestly, what would you have done in my place?